January, can I say to you something, just real quick? Why is it, in every discernible fashion, of all the months of the year, including February and August, do you always have the tendency to suck? But hey, let's give credit where it's due. Not all films released in January were all that bad. Now, while I do readily acknowledge that some January movies are not particularly good, but every once in a shooting star, there is always that one January movie that is either at least watchable, fairly entertaining, or entertaining in a guilty pleasure kind of way. But when January is at its absolute worst, it doesn't show any sign of remorse or mercy, and it makes you pay the consequences for purchasing a ticket for a movie that will later land into absolute obscurity. And it's specifically the case when January itself releases films of the horror genre. And the latest horror movie victim that comes into play comes in the form of The Turning, which is a modern adaptation of the 1898 horror novel, The Turn of the Screw. And the shocker of all shocks, surprise, surprise, it's terrible. Mind-bendingly terrible. And you know what? If this is what the horror genre is going to look like in the preceding months of 2020, then I would be undeniably shocked, to say the least. And I know that I stated that in passing. I am not a huge fan of the horror movie genre, especially when it comes to demonic possession and ghouls. But if there is a horror movie that has to do with like apparitions or messing with the victim's mind that surprises me and does a good job with its execution and its story, then I will absolutely give the movie the credit it deserves. But when it's something like this, well, let's get started, shall we? The entire premise of The Turning is that a former teacher named Kay, played by Mackenzie Davis, who was recently seen in one of the worst Terminator films ever, Terminator Dark Fate, is hired as a governess, essentially a live-in nanny, to live at this not even slightly creepy at all mansion, to tutor a 7-year-old girl named Flora, played by Brooklyn Prince, and to deal with her older brother Miles, played by Finn Wolfhard, after their parents tragically died in a car accident. During her stay, the children start to do creepy and unnerving things. Some apparitions occasionally show up to haunt the governess, and nothing else of interest or anything that could even resemble something of an actual story comes even close to happening after that. Now, let me get my biggest issue out of the way real quick for you all. And I'm being dead serious about this. I'm not even kidding at all. This movie has no plot. At all! What maladies does the movie's non-existent plot suffer from? Oh, nothing much really. Just missing certain elements like structure, character development, a central identity, or even a coherent narrative, of course. This entire movie is arranged of setups and ideas that felt like they were thought of by the directors and writers, and they got all the pitches and just threw them up in the air and decided randomly which 4 out of the 400 ideas would make the film work, except that they didn't analyze those ideas and just used the Cliff Notes versions of those ideas. It has some of the ideas of a psychological horror where it can go from something interesting to make the audience and even the main characters filled with anxiety, fearful of what may transpire in the darkest reaches of their mind, pulling at the strings. But it doesn't do those things in any particular result. What's worse is that the whole crux of the plot, that being a ghost that is infesting the house and even the lives of these kids, doesn't even materialize until we nearly eclipse the 1 hour mark in a 1 hour and 34-minute movie. Because everything that has nothing to do with the film's supposed central narrative is mainly focusing on these 2 kids freaking Kate out, doing horrible pranks on her, doing abnormal things, Kate experiencing visions throughout her visit, even a vision within a vision, and the cycle continues throughout the majority of the movie's runtime, up until we finally arrive 2/3 of the way through the movie, where Kate finally asks questions about the house to find answers, and for just a few minutes is something that resembles an actual plot. And you know what? Even for a horror movie that is at least 94 minutes long, it's ungodly boring. The pacing is at a snail-like speed, mostly due to the vacuous structure that is so repetitive, and there's no sense of real character development or even a moment to where we feel some emotional resonance or sympathy for any of these characters as much as we want to. Like how Kate's mom is at a mental institution and she has to visit her every once in a while. And even the 2 kids have problems of their own that they're dealing with. Maybe some scenes where both the governess and the 2 kids having scenes with one another could probably fix the issue and make us care about them. But the movie makes them about as annoying and irritating as can be, which makes it harder for me to care about them. And the movie doesn't spend time establishing these characters as characters, so we just jump from scene to scene of whatever random incident that Kate and the two kids are going to do. There are a total of 2 saving graces in this movie, and they're mostly comprised of 2 performances from the cast. Barbara Martin is fairly good as the children's caretaker. Sure, her main character fits the one-dimensional horror stereotype of a hauntingly unsettling old woman who makes the main character feel insecure about what they are gonna do like a glove. But performance-wise, she did a very adequate job in her role and maintained the presence of her character very admirably. The same can sort of be said to Brooklyn Prince. Her acting as this very precocious but creepy girl is solid. She has fairly decent range in her role. She offers the creepy factor to a tiny extent. At other points it falters in a way that her acting doesn't really work out in the film, but it's solid. However, I cannot say the same for Mackenzie Davis, as I believe her performance was played way too excessively and a bit over the top. Not to mention that her character doesn't make the smartest decisions in a situation, like looking at a group of beheaded dolls in a fountain and even a blink and you'll miss it apparition jump scare, and then not having the courage to go, what was that? Did you see what I just saw? I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm gonna get out of here. Maybe this whole nanny thing wasn't so much of a good idea. See ya! Finn Wolfhard was good in Stranger Things, but someone I didn't tolerate in the It movies is terrible in this film. His line delivery is so dry, and he doesn't have the presence to capture even the essence of a smart aleck or even a violently abusive kid. And it also doesn't help that the way that his character is written is infuriating, and the way that he treats other characters around him just makes you want to punch him. Unless you're a pacifist, in which case you shake your head and you just plead for Calmer to strike him down. But you know what? It's bad enough that you have to spend the movie with annoying, irritating characters that make you beg for the pain to stop. It's bad enough for you to deal with this movie's snail-like pacing. It's bad enough that this movie has terrible performances, banal cinematography, a nauseating score, and jump scares that wouldn't even scare even the most paranoid of individuals. The ending of this movie, I couldn't believe it. The film, when it gets to the supposed climax of the film, and everything is falling apart for our characters as they're trying to do whatever it takes to escape the hellish house that is infested by a ghost named Quint, who had a bad influence on the children during his stay, and then, after everything seems to be going perfectly fine for our characters, the movie pulls a dead rabbit out of its hat by tricking the audience at what just ensued, and ends in a way that the movie thinks constitutes as an ambiguous twist ending to make you feel like that there was something wrong with the protagonist's psyche, without any prior explanation or figuring out why this revelation is the case. Now, something like this could have worked if there was setup and conflict involved that made you interested in the story of the ghost, the house, the characters, and it all wraps up into being one gigantic payoff. Look at The Haunting, the original in 1963. That's a prime example of setting up characters and the mythology that happens within the story and ending in a way that sends shivers down the audience's spine. But The Turning has no direction of where it wants to go. All this movie is potential setup for something that could be explored and never delivering on what it sets out to do. And by the time the ending occurs, when the screen abruptly cuts to black, you are left baffled, bored, and even downright frustrated because everything you wanted explained is just totally shoved to the sidelines. In summation, The Turning sets another low bar for January horror films. The film has the material to try and design what was supposed to be a paranormal psychological horror film to make the audience and even the main character lose their mind and driven to insanity. But it's unfortunate that this movie has zero identity of its own to compensate. The only thing that is turning, according to this film's title, is the audience walking the other direction and seeing a better film than this righteous steaming pile. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so that was my review of The Turning. If you like this video, please like and comment below what you thought of the film. You'll also find me in media outlets such as Facebook, Twitter, and if you have a phone, find me on Instagram. And as always, if you'd like to see more reviews like this, be sure to subscribe for more. We're starting 2020 rough, but hopefully it can get better from here. My name is Luke Nukem. And you, my friends, have been blown away.